Welcome to the Rise to Thrive podcast with Matt
and Brooke,
where we embrace what it means to be human and explore how to become the most expansive versions of ourselves through vitality, connection, and play.
Expect honest conversations, transformative stories, and playful shenanigans as we unpack what it means to claim a life of your own creation.
Ready? Let's rise. And we're back for another episode of the Rise to Thrive podcast. We're your hosts, Matt
And Brooke.
And we're back with another special guest, Mr. Rand Ewing. Welcome to the podcast, brother.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here with y'all.
Super excited for this conversation. You know, we met Rand last year. What time of year was it?
In August?
August of last year at the Remembrance 2 gathering put on by Sacred Sons. Co-ed gathering of serious, deep intention and deep work and healing out on the Salish Sea in Washington. And we didn't have a whole lot of interaction. I know you came through the sanctuary space, which we were co-hosting and facilitating with Bryce and Tiff. And I remember you popping up to share a poem of yours, some poetry of yours. And
yeah.
I think you did mention in that moment that you wrote it in prison. And we did catch you also very briefly out in the field on the way to lunch or dinner one evening.
Yeah.
And we got a little snippet, you know, the cold notes of your story and some transformational moments. And I know both Brooke and I were left with such an impact from you in hearing that.
We got this tiny little bit and we're like, we need to hear the whole story of Rand because it was just so potent, and then you just poofed away. So yeah, so I was so eager when I started making my list of people that I wanted to have on the podcast. You were instantly somebody that came to mind. So I'm glad that we're doing this. We're having this conversation, and I'm stoked to hear more of the juicy goodness that you have to share with us and our audience. And yeah.
So thanks for being here. Yeah, with that context in the background, tell us a little bit about, how Rand got to where he's at today.
Oh, that's a big bite.
Or maybe, we met at Remembrance, which is the Sacred Son. So weaving into how your experience was there and what led you to Remembrance, maybe that'll give you a little bit more guideline.
Yeah. What led me to Remembrance was just a deep call to be involved in men and women coming back together. There's been a deep separation between men and women, rightfully so, given patriarchal energy and oppression and just all kinds of energies that men have presented towards women for a really long time. Somewhere along my journey, I felt called to being a man who's deeply in touch with the feminine side of himself, this wild river running through him, and someone who has had to intentionally explore the masculine side in order to find some harmony within. I just felt like, I really feel like I want to be involved in that. I really enjoy working with women. I really enjoy working with men. And I see what a divide there is there. And I really feel like the limitations that men have set upon women are limiting men in similar ways. Obviously, there's been a lot enacted upon women, but we're all being limited here by any limitation, any oppression, any abuse. And yeah, so I was just deeply called to that. That's what brought me to Remembrance. And within that, how can I help bring women and men together? I thought, if men aren't showing up and doing the work, then there's no way to show up with any kind of humility and say, hey, women, please come with us. Please be in the work with us. So that's really how Sacred Sons probably fell on my radar originally. Even before I was doing a quote unquote men's work, Sacred Sons was showing up and I was intrigued. And I'd been in a couple of immersions with them, the 2-day container, and I just felt called to serve at Remembrance and reached out and got on the support staff and found my way there and met just a beautiful amount of intentional souls looking to do the work and looking to be together in it. And I was really impressed by the ability to be in a container with men and women doing the work together. That was really, really beautiful and vulnerable and tender. And there was just so much raw humanness there. And like you, I was also really struck by a handful, 10, 12 individuals that really stood out in my mind. The two of you were definitely that, and the moments that we got to share were really potent and impactful. Definitely the evening in the sanctuary, what really caught me was your playful energy and your openness to express yourselves and your art and to be calling others into that. That was just such a supportive space within that whole container of intense, deep work that we could also play and be artistic and be fun. And Brooke's wearing a clown nose, and I believe, and just all this real beautiful energy. So it became really easy for me to open up to the both of you, and I shared some spaces, share some things and some spaces that probably wouldn't normally come up in conversation, but here we are, and I feel really blessed in that. Period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that you got to touch on the piece of the play piece too, you know. It's like we come on and we share all this like deep work and emotions and vulnerability, and like we were holding down that sanctuary space, which was the silly sanctuary or the silly ceremony. Oh no, something Bryson
The
Tibbs
silly
came.
sanctuary, we hosted ceremony there, like whatever you want to, whatever pun you choose, go for it.
Right. But that's something that we value too. I mean, Rise to Thrive is one of our pillars is play, because it's like we can't really be doing the deep work and not have the capacity for the joy, you know. And so it was kind of funny though, because we had a really like deep intentional cacao ceremony right before that ended up being like 3 hours long, and we're trying to do this like talent show and it was like totally
two different vibes.
Totally two different vibes. And and it wasn't our best work. It wasn't our best, like we didn't put on our best work that night. So thank you for seeing. I think there's just, yeah, but how important that piece is, especially in these spaces. And I think there could be even more of that, of the playful fun, dance, connection, laughter, improv games, you know, that we got really into.
Yeah, but it obviously took on a life of its own. It became what it was meant to become. And those who, you know, had the patience and the determination to, I don't want to say get through the beautiful intentional invocation that Jamie brought forward for the cacao ceremony, like those who stayed and had the reverence and wanted to be a part of that and were meant to be a part of that were. And it was so cool because what started out with the intention of being like a silly, playful, goofy kind of thing ended up becoming like a lot of people sharing their art and their gifts and their talents and their medicine music. And it was really, really a beautiful night.
Well, yeah, because it almost shows, you know, it's like we got to hear a bit about you with your poetry written when you were in jail or prison. I forget which exactly. So it's like, oh my gosh, like these humans have these stories that get to be told through their art. You know, you get a snippet into like they're more than just this person coming in to do the deep healing work. And that's what's so tasteful, is like we get to see so much more of somebody through this unique expression through play. And I'm a poet too. I love the poetry as well. So that I know how much we can really express in words in that way that we can't. Sometimes like just a language is limiting, you know, but to be able to speak in metaphors and to paint people a picture with description and just the artistic way that, you know, we have the ability to express ourselves, like it just gives us more. It gives us more of who somebody is. And so I'd love for you to share. Yeah, I mean, more. I'm sure people are like, what? Like, what is his journey in jail? How did he get there? Like, he's writing poetry here. Like, how did you even get there? Yeah, tell us more about that story.
Yeah, so I guess the long arc is I spent a lot of my formative years and most of my adult life deeply depressed and limiting myself from authentic expression and really filtering who I was in order to meet the needs of others, probably just out of fear and Yeah, just kind of being stuck in that. Probably my teenage years until, honestly, until I was about 42. At that point, um, I had moved away from substances for the most part, um, which had really kind of piled on in the 20s and 30s, in my 20s and 30s. So I was really facing a lot of my mental health issues, really feeling them rawly, and not really having any tools or any understanding of like what was going on, or how I operated. I was in a really toxic relationship with myself. I was living in Oregon at the time, in Eugene, and I had moved out there with my wife, and our relationship became very toxic. And it was just a space of probably 6 years or so where I was really not taking care of myself. I was really burning the candle at both ends. For the last 2 years before I was free, I was working 7 days a week, days and nights, days as a carpenter, nights as a doing janitorial work, and really struggling just to get through the day, and struggling in my relationship. And there was just a lot of anger and frustration and stress and chaos. And ultimately, I became violent. And within that, I earned my way into an incarceration of 32 months. Up until that point, I didn't have any history with the criminal justice system. And yeah, that's where I found myself, facing the consequences of my actions and really just having to sit in that. But the beauty is that I found a way to step out of a deep pattern of accepting behavior towards myself and accepting behavior from another, and really choosing myself for the first time in life. Probably the date was February 10th of 2018, and I was confronted with a situation where it was essentially, um, I had two choices: to return to the same pattern, or to step away. And within that step away, I knew that I was going to face reality, that I was going to do some time incarcerated. Um, on February 14th, on February 10th, I left the house. I didn't come back. I worked both my jobs. On February 14th, got I got picked up, and I was being held by a local police department in the back of a squad car on a plastic seat, and I was handcuffs with my hand behind my back. And up until that point, that was probably the freest that I'd ever felt, because I knew that I'd really done something, that I'd stepped away from a pattern, and I escaped something that I was really caught in, and I didn't see any way out of. At that point, I'd alienated myself from all friends and family. The only voice that I was hearing was my partner's, and I'd given up agency, and I said given up my own voice. And yeah, I just in incarceration, I really found freedom. So it took a while within that space of time to start to come to some level of health physically. I was on some pretty heavy mental health medications that were really limiting my health. And shortly after I was locked up, I started to step away from those, knowing that they were a bridge to help me get from where I was to where I desired to be, but I truly didn't desire to be on them. I wanted to design a life where I could work with depression, and I could work with anxiety, and I could find practices that supported me within that. So my journey in incarceration was really like just deep exploration of self. I got deep in what spirituality looks like for me, and deep in prayer, deep in meditation, deep in writing, deep in studying words, deep in taking care of my body. And it was a real jump off for me. Yeah, I was there. I was all alone. Of course, I started to make reconnection with family and friends, and I stepped away from that alienation. But it was really a place where I had to face me and my choices head on. And I feel really grateful for that. It was a really probably the most humble opportunity to work on myself.
Wow. I mean, that's pretty wild. One thing that stands out to me is how you found so much health in prison, mental health, spiritual health, physical health. That's more than feel like a lot of people can say in those spaces. So kudos to you for using that time intentionally and really going inwards, it sounds like, to rehabilitate yourself. It's really powerful.
Yeah, it was like once I lit that candle, it was just like something was feeding me, and I really felt safe, and I really felt held. And within that area, within the confines of it, brotherhood is something that we had abundance of, because there was all men there, and very, very little contact with women outside of a few correctional officers. And that's really where I started to come back to just pure like for myself. Like, I'm okay with me, and really started to touch love for myself. Um, Maybe the first time ever. And just really kept cultivating that more and more. And I was just drawn deeper and deeper in. And yeah, that's how men's work really started for me.
So what was that like being in that space, like with other men and having to face yourself and like I don't know, I guess I'm just curious like what the relationships was like, how that was
Yeah.
impacting you, how you were impacting others, like paint me more a picture of that.
Yeah, I think what it showed me is that it just reinforced for me that I just get to show up and be myself. I mean, if you look into me, you could find out what the reasons were that I was there. It just became a place where I just accepted everyone for who they were in the moment. I just felt really blessed in that, because here I am. I can't say, I can't say anything or do anything to color what you would think about me. I can only just show up and be me. And I just found a lot of support in that. And there was a lot of brothers sharing their story, and there was a lot of brothers who I could see that, I can understand how you made it here. I can understand
Mm-hmm.
where you're coming from, and that felt really supportive, and that felt, like I said, pretty safe. As wild as that sounds, it
Yeah.
was a minimum security institution, so there was a pretty low level of violence, and there was a pretty low level of prison politics. But that was always there's always an undercurrent that something could go awry. But yeah, I just felt safety. And I think in this moment, I felt safe because I knew somehow, like somehow, in all the self-loathing and suicidal ideology and depression and anxiety and the pure chaos of my inner world and my outer world before, that I made it through, and made my way back to love.
Mm-hmm.
And that really carried me, and we just formed deep bonds with men. Men showing up, telling their story, men showing up, being vulnerable, and then us just going to work.
Yeah.
Whether it be the actual work, the hands-on work, or being in spaces where we're working out together or we're eating together, and just forming our own family, forming our own form of culture, and just really going in. So it was really beautiful,
Yeah.
honestly. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. What a
Yeah.
contrast, from a world of being so isolated. Seems like in just interacting with your spouse or your partner at the time, and how tumultuous that was, and then to step into a space where, it sounded like it was community. It was, like nobody's judging you necessarily on your past. It's more of an empathetic space where people are seeing each other. Like, I imagine and I hear that you felt seen for the
Mhm.
first time, and you were able to empathize with other men of like, okay, I don't necessarily support or condone the behaviors that got you here, but I see you in what you were going through, and what led you to being in this position. Like, I understand, like, all the decisions you made make
Mhm.
perfect sense that landed
Yeah.
you here based on your past. And that's such a what a teacher and what a gateway into empathy and in the real world.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get our back up and get butt hurt when somebody does something to us
Mhm.
out in public, or, like we feel victimized or, treaded upon, or whatever the language you want to use is. But, I've found from my journey too that, seeing things through the lens of another person, like I've noticed that people's actions are always in perfect correlation from where they came from and what they've been through.
Yeah.
And, it really sounds like you got a taste of that in a very compressed window
Yeah.
in that couple years.
Yeah.
Was there like a common thread, like being around all men going through it, like that you could see how men ended up there?
I think it's just disconnect from self, now disconnect from community, disconnect from center, the grounded center of their own energy and or spiritual center, and just not having like the framework, not having support, not having spaces to come to, not having a lot of models of what it looks like to express oneself as a man in a healthy way and deal with anger and deal with frustration and deal with all of these things. I don't know. I think that was probably pretty common.
Yeah. Not having those role models and those people in our community to really show us the way, correct behavior as we're growing up, and, model ourselves after is like such a missing. I mean, I've felt that as a man as well. And I've gone through my own versions of being completely distraught with like, man, where is the father figure? I lost my father 2017, so quite some time ago. And since then, I've had those moments of like crisis or difficulty, heartbreak, and going through life, like feeling like, who's a man that I can go to that's like got me, that can hold me, have my back, and really just be like, it's okay, I got you, and help guide the rebuilding or the evolution or the transformation into the next version of being a man that I was on the cusp of. And it was a deep mourning for me, so I know many men feel that. And there's been such a rise of men's work that's been so supportive. I found it in COVID myself, and it was transformational in so many ways for me. And then I stepped in to serve in that capacity for 3-4 years, and my journey's led me to some other places since then. But I think it's a really, really crucial space to let men feel like, they're not alone, and they have people they can trust, and that, that have their backs.
Yeah, appreciate the work that you both have done, because it is really incredible as a woman, to be entering these spaces, especially something like Remembrance, where they held that container so well with the men and the women, and how they really emphasize to the men, like, yo, this is not a place to be predators. We are not here to make the women feel like they are being preyed upon, and that you're just trying to get with, because women, we have so much of our own trauma with men and being preyed upon and all of our experiences. So coming into a space like that to really feel safe and held, and like they did such a beautiful job at that for the mothers too, and the children, being able to allow the children to run free and have their own reprogramming. It's like, well, yeah, the programming, it's reprogramming. And yeah, I was just in such awe, because I haven't really been in such a container that was so focused on the safety and the well-being, and how seriously they took that. And it showed, and it allowed the women to unfold and to be vulnerable and to be seen. And that's so much of that is what women crave too, and being in this partnership with Matt, like, in the emotional puke bucket that I just learned about, how he's like such a pillar and is such a good listener and is so present and doesn't react. And I hadn't ever really experienced that in any kind of relationship. And I haven't even been in a ton of relationships, probably because I have my own views of what a relationship is, just based on past experiences and what has been demonstrated to me. I'm like, I don't really want that if that's what love is. So I've been so blessed to come into relationship with Matt and other friends and really strong male friendships in my life, and seeing that demonstrated gives me a lot of hope, and that you guys are showing up and doing the work, and Sacred Sons exists, because we just listened to that podcast with that guy who was emphasizing the men's work too and how important.
Yeah. The book's called Notes on Being a Man. Have you heard of that book? No. It just recently popped up in my field through a podcast. I forget the author's name.
But yeah, just emphasizing how the boy is being raised right now. What a crazy time. The confusion too, and not having the masculine leadership and all the, the feminine becoming, the boys becoming women, and that being a choice. And just there's so much. Yeah, we're just in a very interesting time right now with the confusion around gender roles too. And it's like, we're not parents, but these are things to think about, right? Of thinking about having children and how we're going to raise our children in such a turbulent time of identity. So anyway, yeah. That's what I got to say about that.
Deep reflections.
Yeah.
But yeah, just piggybacking off that with what Brooke was saying, this book, the author's name, Notes on Being a Man, Scott Galloway. And for me, it felt like a very modern kind of, not rule book, but like a framework that a young man can model, as he's trying to find his way through the world. But also for me, I really listened to it through the lens of being a father of a boy, raising a son. And he talks a lot about his journey with his two sons. And, to me, I feel like raising sons in this day and age, like everything you just shared, would be really challenging. And yeah, it's nice to hear a framework like that. And also, I think the power of brotherhood, for me, the next evolution of that would be like how to be a good father as I transition into that role, I imagine at some point soon.
Yeah. And because there's so much overlap, what's your connection with your father? Did you have a strong relationship with him? What was that like?
Yeah, I think I felt a real emotional disconnect. My father wasn't very expressive of his emotions. I saw anger and frustration and tiredness. His most powerful and beautiful way of providing and showing love was to provide for us, to work, and to make sure that we had all the things that we needed, and to provide a safe home. And being someone who's sensitive and in touch with their feelings, and more comfortable in that space, I think I didn't really feel a connection with him. Felt more like archetype. And he was gone from the home a lot because he was working a lot. He was doing a lot of things to make sure that we were taken care of, and my brothers and I were taken care of. So within that, there's lots of spaces for me to be stewarded by women, my mother and aunts and babysitters and grandparents. So yeah, and I think there's a gap in Western culture around how do men bring boys into manhood. What's not a lot of rites of passage teaching. There's not a lot of rites of passage action. And within that, that's where I really feel like I got stuck in my emotional body and didn't understand how to step into action and to face things as they came forward. And, was lacking in language and lacking in tools in order to navigate challenges. I just got mired in that. In retrospect, thankfully and blessedly, because it brought me a deep connection to that emotional energy, and it's allowed me to be a much different man than I would have been without that. So
beautiful. I'm curious for you, how did life start to shift or transform following, stepping out of prison and having that deep inner journey that you took, and really starting to catalyze health on so many fronts? How did that transition back into the world look like for you? And yeah, how did things start to unfold in a more upward trend?
Yeah, it felt fantastic. It felt liberating. It felt so supportive. And I was so deeply grounded in my spiritual center and my practices. And I formed my own program there. There wasn't any like, hey, Rand, while you're there, you need to do these things to rehabilitate. I found it on my own. And that's the most empowering piece of all this is that I found my truth. I found truth within universal energy, within God, within Goddess that that resonated with me and that really took hold. That's really still with me today. And that allowed me to navigate the challenges of going from being incarcerated to living in a free world or living as a free individual with much more ease. And I just went to work. I stayed in Oregon for another 6 months, and I worked at a homeless encampment on the north side of Eugene for an organization called St. Vincent de Paul. And I just provided service for the individuals who were living in the encampment. At first was like intake and cleanup and just overall care for them. And then it became that plus maintenance. So I was doing light maintenance around the camp and light electrical work, things of that nature. And I also got to dip deeply back into joy, and I got to be on my bike, and I got to feel the air and put my feet on the ground and just take it all in. Just to really get deep in how good it feels to be alive and to make my own choices and do my own grocery shopping and to ride my bike like a boy to work, from work, to every space because I didn't have a car at the time, to every space that I wanted to be in, and to hikes and things of that nature. So, like I said, I lived there for another 6 months, and then I made my way back to Indiana, and it was a really warm homecoming. And when I got here, I had just a wild sense of wanting to be with community and wanting to build community. And I come from parents who are very much community builders and very much put a lot of energy around the importance of that, as a family and as a family who's in the community. So when I got home, I got back to Indy, I was just geeked in that. I was also dealing with a copious amount of social anxiety. And I told myself, I was like, look, you are a Leo sun here, and you're going to want to be in with people, and you're going to have to figure out how to navigate social anxiety. And I just kept thrusting myself into spaces where I was with people. And I just was so, like I said, so warmly received. And it felt so cool. It felt so great to be received as me, because I felt like the biggest, brightest, authentic version of me that to that point I'd ever been. And it was almost like Goddess Universe was saying, yes, please, more of this, please. So I just kept showing up, and people kept showing up in response to me. And yeah, from then on, it was on. It was, being invited into communities and being with people each day and going about my work. And that's kind of just how things have played out here. And I feel deeply, deeply grateful for that. And within all of that, I found a deeper connection to men's work. And that was really another jump off for me.
Yeah. So did you like kind of immediately transition some of what you were doing, while you were incarcerated into the real world in terms of facilitation with the men's work? Was that pretty quick after, getting released, or did that slowly evolve as you found your footing and, reintegrating yourself back into community where you felt all of a sudden, okay, I need to start serving or giving back or hosting spaces where other men can come and feel safe and start to rehabilitate or transform themselves or have support?
Yeah, I started to do some studying around what around facilitation in 2021, maybe 2022. I entered into a life coaching program that was supportive around me using my voice and honing communication skills. But it wasn't really until 2023, I think was the year, when I started to get into men's work on in a formal way. I was on the island of Kauai working and playing, and shortly after I got there, I was invited into real organically an I group, so a small group of Mankind Project, a long-standing men's work group here in the States. And yeah, I just saw men showing up. These brothers, 10, 8, 10, 12, 15 strong, a varying, a rotating roll call or rotating group of men showing up every week. And there were men who were younger than me. There were men who were near my age, and there were men who were my father's age, and they just showed up. They showed up no matter what was going on in their life, whether they had, literally just lost their wife, or we're in a really great place, or we're really challenged. And that was such a powerful place. I had shortly before that started working for myself, and that's kind of how I found myself on Kauai working. And it was just another space where I was showing up as myself, real authentically, real boldly, real strongly. Once again, universe goddess was saying, yes, please, more of this, please. Yeah, that was really supportive for me. And then I was on the island for about 4.5 months, and I got home and I was like, girl, I need this in my life. And it's not go. I looked around for an I group in Indy, and there was some, but it was just like, I just want to do my own thing here. And so I formed a small group of 5. We went on every other week for 6, 9 months, and then it kind of fizzled as I had a little less energy to give towards it with with a big project of my own work in carpentry. And then on the other side of that work, I was pretty cooked, and I didn't have a lot of energy for anything, so I kind of laid low for a month. And then in October, I was like, all right, it's time to get back into this. This is now a year plus ago, and I called in 20 or 30 men. I'm the kind of guy that doesn't really know a stranger, so I'm continually talking to and meeting and having. I'm also in my scorpionic energy. I like depth, and I'm probably going to get into a deep conversation with you, maybe to a fault at times. But so yeah, I also have a real easy way of building energetic rapport. I think having walked in my own shadows and been in some challenging, literally, physically, spiritually, emotionally challenging places, I carry a healthy amount of humility with me because I'm wholly no better than you. Yeah, so I just started calling in men. I called in 20 or 30 men, and like I said, a year and a half ago, they started to step in, and they just showed up, and they just continue to show up, and now it's like every other week there's 15 guys in a circle, and it started off as just that circle. It was and now it's become like real strong community. We find places to work together, we find places to eat together, we work out together, we get into breath together. We share what's going on in our lives, and we continue to just show up for one another. And it's not just that circle. Like I said, it's now become this community, and I feel really grateful for that because it's also been really supportive for me. So for me, facilitation kind of came through one, just having a public speaking background, and 2, just desire to be of service, and a really deep imprint from Mankind Project, and a really deep imprint of how important brotherhood is, like in a space where there's, not much else than that. And yeah, it just took off from there. So here we are. Here we are. And within that, I started to touch spaces like being with the Sacred Sons, and I've done some work with a group out of Canada called Man Aligned. And yeah,
I know Man Aligned.
Yeah, G and formerly Hugo and Jamie McDonald. Yeah, it just feels like calling. It feels like work and purpose. And in all of this, I found value. Just value in life. And I lived a whole bunch of life where I wasn't ever accessing that. And that led to depression, and that led to anxiety, and that led to suicidal ideology. And I think in doing the inner work and like facing the things and feeling the whole spectrum of this sensual erotic existence, feeling joy and feeling bliss and feeling pleasure, and then also feeling absolutely wrecked and feeling the death of versions of myself and feeling, dark things that's where that value comes from. And I just want men to understand that that's who they are, and that it's okay to feel all of those things. It's okay to be tender. It's okay to feel wrecked. It's okay to be all of the things, in between there, and continue to be, who you are, as well as and that is that you can hold yourself in that, and that yes, I can feel like the death of certain parts of me. I can feel grief. I can feel sadness, but I can also hold more than just that, and that also is where that value comes from. That the depth of this experience is so impactful that it continues to pull me forward, push me, and pull me forward in a way that I didn't understand until I did.
Yeah, I mean, going back, I just love just putting myself into your position of like coming free from, you said 32 months incarcerated, out into the world, and just like the simple pleasures of riding the bike and giving back and going grocery shopping, things like that. Like, I feel like so many of us take for granted all the time. And so what a beautiful experience for you to go through the hardship and the challenge just so that you can enjoy and be more present and appreciative of life itself. So you probably do have more capacity because of what you've gone through to feel the joy and excitement and just all the little wonders and how much more gratitude that you get to live with. And I think that's really sweet to be able to share like what's on the other side of the hard shit is like
Yeah.
so much more beauty and grace.
I'm curious if you were to talk to like a young man who's having some struggles finding his way in the world, that may be trending towards some of the paths that you found yourself on, whether it's substances or the depression or anxiety, or what would you suggest or what would you offer to that young man to help course correct or to help to start to find some light at the end of what might seem like a dark tunnel?
That's a great question. I think that I would offer that there's more strength within you than you can possibly imagine, and that nothing that you can do or say can take away from the fact that you're worthy of being loved, and that you're worthy of loving yourself, and that there's something really powerful here seeking you that loving way. That might it kind of sounds wild in this moment, but yeah, that love is truly in the transformative force that that we say it is. That it's not just anecdotal. That if you can find ways to operate that help you feel that love, then you can really tap to your purpose, and you can really find a reason to get up every day, and you can really find a reason to, because being a unique individuation of source, it's a lonely experience, because there's only one man, there's only one Matt, there's only one Brooke, and within that, no one's going to understand your perspective. But if you find a way to share with others what's going on within you, then you really can. One, you're going to become bonded with people, and two, you're really going to find that, like, oh, that's why I'm here. This is what I'm supposed to do. Yeah, and I guess like it's just that it's okay. It's okay to feel all the things. But it's okay to be a man and to feel soft and to feel tender and to feel sensitive and to express those things in a world that said that's not how men show up.
Yeah, that's a big difficult one for many men, is the dance between feeling it but also not being swept away by it, right? It's like
That's the
holding the container,
that's the play,
and letting it all be felt fully and being so present with it, but then not letting it run the show.
right? Yeah, to hold all that there is to experience here without collapsing into it is really, I don't know that it's really talked about. And I'm 49 years old, and I'm still experiencing it. I'm still learning how to hold myself in this storm, and to understand that steadiness within all of that is really inherent to who I am. Like that's part of being a masculine being, is that, yeah, you could feel all of that. And with enough intentional energy around devoting myself to things that serve me, I can be that. Like I don't have to collapse. And I didn't understand that. I've been collapsing for the majority of my life into, felt experience and whatever it may be in front of me, my partner's experience, my own felt experience. That's challenging, because it literally was going against what it is to be a man and what it is to really tap into masculine energy probably on the strongest level. It's to actually feel all the things, and not become so consumed by them and into that collapse or into the collapse, and then to be caught up in the shadow side of that, and then you start to abuse, you start to manipulate, you start to control, and I think that's what's kind of happened here on a grand scale across a really long time with men and patriarchy.
Yeah. Seems like it's in service of like self-preservation, survival. It's like I can't not collapse into all the emotions, so I need to start to control my environment, control the people, the avoidant behavior, the substances to numb. Like even just the behavior of numbing is kind of the other end of the collapse, that the shadow that us men carry is like just to be numb and to not feel anything, because I need to stay productive, I need to stay providing, I need to stay showing up, but you're not fully showing up. You might be there physically, but.
Well, I feel like there's also like the other option is just like resignation. It's like I see that, I feel like, in my dad. It's like just resigning, kind of like not even putting the effort in anymore, or maybe feeling demasculated in some way. And I don't know, I feel like our culture too now is so like the pendulum is always swinging, like so far one side, now it's so far to the other side. And I feel like a lot of men don't feel connected to their divine masculinity, or feel demasculated by women maybe in some ways. They actually end up taking a back seat and not feeling like they can show up and have their purpose as a man. And then we have a lot of these men that aren't really showing up in the ways that they're meant to, or that they're designed to. And then that leads the women being like, oh, I don't have a man to like show up, but he's not given the environment to really be living his purpose in that way. So
it's like a negative feedback loop that doesn't serve either the masculine or the feminine, like you were saying at the beginning of this conversation, right?
Yeah.
Right. It's like the women now we're like, well, we're empowered, we're independent, we can do whatever we want to do. We don't need a man, right? But then it's like, well, I don't know. I mean, now, because that was me. That totally was me. I was so independent my whole life. And maybe that was because of my parents' dynamic too, right? It's like I didn't see like I needed anyone. Like I could do everything on my own. Maybe that's why I wasn't in a bunch of relationships, because they wouldn't be serving me, But now being in this divine relationship, this partnership, like, wow, it has opened up so much for me to feel more deeply, to collapse, to puddle, to cry. Like, holy shit, I cry. It feels like every day. But having somebody to be there to hold me in that space and to be the anchor for me to be able to be a puddle. And then I just move through it, For me, it's like, okay, it's a wave. I do the thing, and then I'm like, all right, I'm good. But I've also been in a situationship with someone who was way more feminine than I was, and I was the one holding him in his ocean of emotion. And he was very against men's work, actually, which was fascinating, that he had like this, I don't need the men's work, very like lone man, I can do things on my own. But I think that's where this men's work is really powerful, because, you guys get to come together and remind each other of what it does mean to be men, and be able to show your emotions and be vulnerable with one another, and have a space to allow those maybe distasteful emotions. I mean, we talk about like the rage and Matt feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling this rage in my, solar plexus right now. But like, what are the healthy ways to release that? Because he's like, I don't want to scare you and, let it be this whatever dumpster fire of craziness and emotions, but having the men to hold each other and facilitate those spaces where you can move through those emotions in a really healthy and safe and productive way. I see that being really important with the men's container. So yeah, thank you for doing it and finding that and being empowered. And I love that you were able to come to your journey like on your own too, because there's so much like outsourcing of everything in this world, outsourcing our health, outsourcing our food, outsourcing. We go to other people to fix our problems. And like, it's really great to hear your story and our other buddy too, who overcame alcoholism and addiction to alcohol completely on his own and created his own program and own protocol for remembering who he is at his core. So it's really cool to see that, and then to be the guide, to help others remember that they have the power within them and that they don't need to outsource it.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, I came from very solid upbringing. I still found a way to depression and anxiety and self-loathing, and like I said, I was just in that downward spiral for a really, really long time. And finding my own way through it was really what I needed the most. Like, that's what I needed to do. I needed to find how to access masculinity in that way. How do I take direct action towards bettering myself? How do I take direct action towards finding out how to be just okay on a day-to-day basis? And that changed everything.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, that being said, I mean, I'd love to ask one more question before we start to close. Do you want to ask?
Sure. What does a thriving life look like and mean to you?
Oh, thriving life to me looks like a place where I can express myself authentically. I can show up in an authentic expression of who I am without fear that it's not okay, or that I'm not enough, or that I'm not worthy. And it looks like the freedom to use my voice and to say, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I desire, and the ability just to like feel my way through it, and understand that this is going to be an ever-changing thing, and that in feeling all the things that I'm really accessing the fullness of what it's like to be a human being. Yeah.
Beautifully said. Cool, Rand. Well, where can people find you if they are interested in getting more connected with you or working with you or dropping into your community of men's work? Where can they get in touch?
They can find me on Instagram at rand.rising. You can also find me at Rand Ewing or via Rand Ewing on Facebook. Those are my two spaces currently. And in those containers, you can find my phone number. You can find an email. You can direct message me. Please do, if you're called to have conversation. I am definitely here for that. I do work one-on-one with individuals looking to find their truth. Within finding my own truth, that was one of the biggest things that came through me in the coaching realm, was like, how do I help people find what's inherent to them? That just was such a deep call for me. So, yeah.
Amazing. Anything else that you're like, I need the world to know? Like, this is your space. You have the floor. Any final words?
It's interesting, and I like to talk. So this is a good platform.
I
I just
Except when you're on the spot.
yeah. Yeah. No, I don't think really. I think I've said enough here. I feel pretty complete in this.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here. Thanks for showing up with such courage and vulnerability and authenticity. It's so refreshing to continue to connect with, human beings in general, but men specifically are willing to show some emotion, and especially on a public platform that others are going to circulate and see online. Like, I really acknowledge and see that in you, and thank you for staying the course. It'd be very easy, I don't want to say easy, but given the turmoil and things, like there's a reason why, 4 out of 5 suicides are men right now. And the courage that it takes to stay committed to life and to keep pushing through the darkness and the challenge and the difficulty, man, like I acknowledge you for doing that and finding your way back to the light and then serving in the way that you do.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think that's one of my calls is don't go it alone. Like, yeah, you can do it alone, but it's only going to go so far. And we're speeding towards a place where community is meaning more and more and more. And I truly believe the only way back to where we are living in a world that actually serves us as humans is through that community and through finding ways to go through spaces where there's conflict within community. There's going to be rupture. There needs to be a way to figure out how to repair it. And these are those kind of spaces where we get together and we share what we have going on and we find the strength to say the hard thing. We find the strength to say, I need to have a conversation with you. And we find a way to work with the emotional charge in a way that's not just me pummeling Matt with my raw emotions, but it's a way that Matt and Brooke can express those things while still holding a level of, what's the word? A level of decorum, I guess, just to use a word. But, for each of us to be accessing the femininity and the masculinity within us, and expressing it in a way that is, yes, I am feeling this, but I can hold myself in it. And I desire to work through it with you because we live in a relational realm. We're not going to stop relating to one another if we don't find ways to work in community in healthy ways and to be reparative. Then we're going to continue to be in this place of chaos and violence and war and living really truly outside of who we are as humans.
I mean, they say the great they, whoever that is,
The great day.
I mean, the most like transformational spiritual experience, more than like an ayahuasca ceremony, is being in relationship. It's like, and we're reading these books, The Way of Mastery, or we've read this book that's been such a potent guide for us. Really amazing spiritual text that like kind of always is very playful, but talking about, it could be easier to go and be a monk out in the mountains all alone in your own, where nothing is triggering you and nothing is causing any sort of emotional disturbance, right? But to be in this world, that's where the true transformation and the work is. So to be able to integrate, yes, the going inward, the meditation, all these beautiful practices that we have so that we can be the bridge between both worlds. Like that is the real work to be done here. And it's great and it's hard and it's all of the things. But I mean, I love humans. We love humans, and like community and connection is literally everything to us. Like, we have our times of being in community and then we're like, okay, now we need to be isolated in the woods and then now I need community again. And so it's the ebb and flow. It's like the integration of it too. So yeah. And what came to me that you're like, what you said about we need each other to go far. There's the quote, like, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that kind of made me think like you like were fast pacing your whole awakening journey when you were incarcerated in that short amount of time. So that now you were able to speed up to get to the point to know that we have to go together, and that together is the way that we can sustain this and really do it up, do what we need to do here. It's so much better. It's so much more fun. It's so much more joy and play and all the things. Like humans are really incredible beings. Yep.
Beautiful fractals of the universal energy.
We're all one. We are all divine mirrors, as they say. The great creator, the one, whatever you believe in. Goddess, I like that you say. Yeah.
Beautiful. All right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap there. Thanks again, Rand, for being here, and enjoy your time at the climbing gym. Sure. And to everybody else listening, we'll see you in the next one.
All right. Peace and love, y'all.
Much love.